My dear fellow Toastmasters and our wonderful guests, our pride and it's our honor to welcome our special guest. Would you like to learn a simple technique to boost your public speaking? Perhaps a shortcut to speech preparation and a natural way to get ideas out of your head. In this insightful program, you will learn tips to save time crafting any type of presentation. Discover how to quickly sort your thoughts. Revisit how you organize and finish a speech. Our special guest speaker for this learning session share insights with us from over 3 decades as a professional speaker and as an international trainer. If you attended the TAC 2007 in Doha or the TAC 2019 in Manama, you met her as she was a main stage speaker. CEO of Sparkle Presentations, Sheryl Roush has given well over 3,500 on-site presentations in 12 countries, add to the virtual, and was honored with a presidential citation. As a speaking coach, she started the Speakers Bureau for the U.S. Olympic Training Center in San Diego, training Olympians to share their stories. She has also trained the lecture team for Deepak Chopra. In Toastmasters, she is honored with the Elite Accredited Speaker designation, earned for outstanding public speaking skills, which was judged in 6 categories of presentations. Since 1981, there have been only 87 honorees in 143 countries, and she was the youngest woman to earn the credential in 1993. A 17-time published author, the Heart of Toastmaster book, sanctioned by Toastmasters International, and received Best Anthology from International Book Awards, showing us how to speak like a pro with this session on using mind mapping to easily craft a presentation. Let's welcome to the DAC, Distinguished Toastmaster, Past District Governor, Accredited Speaker, Sheryl Roush.
Wonderful introduction. Welcome. Good evening, DTAC. I am thrilled about your club and congratulations on your virtual meetings. Wow. We have such a great attendance here. And if you're on Facebook Live, hello, hello. Thank you otherwise for Zooming with us. And welcome to this very content-packed, I think very highly energizing session this evening. And thank you very much to the club and the leadership for your invitation to be here. I am truly honored. Thank you. There is a handout posted in the chat box for you. You may want to click on it, download it, bring it to your desktop. And there's a secondary handout that is also being posted for extra worksheet. This is an interactive workshop. There will be questions toward the end of the session. And thank you very much to our chat master who is going to be monitoring that. So grab that piece of paper, print it out, and a pen, something to write with. And this is something your entire family can join along with. So let's take a look. This is the actual handout here. And you might be familiar with the process called mind mapping. Raise your hand if yes, that you've done mind mapping before. And it's interesting because our children in early school ages now are being taught this particular process for helping them with their creativity. Perhaps we as adults miss this particular training. The reason why this was the topic selected for tonight's special presentation is to help you craft any presentation, regardless of how long, how brief that it may be, regardless of if it's your icebreaker or a more advanced presentation that you're giving, something of a personal nature, or perhaps even to presenting a briefing to your employer. You can even plan parties using this, by the way. So your holiday plans, all of this can be used for anything that you're doing here. And then we'll also refer to the bottom left-hand section of this, because now what do you do after you get those thoughts out of your head and start organizing them? By the way, these are techniques which are also used to craft speech contest speeches that win. Just thought I'd tell you that. And since you do have a world champion yourself in District 79, most of us, when we start beginning a presentation and we're trying to get the thoughts out of our head, we take this yellow lined pad of paper and we start writing it out, which here's how our brain works. It sees the lines and it stops. The mind, the left brain, is trying to make things to be more logical, that everything needs to be in order. I call it brain freeze. Have you ever had that, where all of a sudden the thoughts just freeze up and you're thinking, what was I even thinking? It's because the lines are trying to force our left brain, which is logical and linear, to put things in an organized structure. That's why it doesn't work. Now, even though in color psychology, yellow is a color that promotes happiness and feelings of cheerfulness and mental stimulation, consider using yellow paper without lines. And it might even be that as we're developing our presentation, that we turn to our smart devices. It might be on our phone, or we might start dictating in a recording application or on our laptop. Any of those. Well, I impart to you tonight a new idea. So get ready and let's have some fun with this. This concept of Tony Buzan's he's a creator of the mind map. You might remember him because he was our Golden Gavel Award recipient, I believe in Washington, D.C. And so we got to meet him, and I was blessed to be invited to have dinner with him by our Toastmasters International Convention Chair, Paul White. So Tony recently passed, rest in peace. And thank you for blessing us around the world with your concept of mind mapping. On your handout, then, let's take a look at this particular, it almost looks like I have to do with your children, by the way, as you put their name in the middle of the circle and every line around that your child helps say something that they really like about themselves. This is great for self-esteem for kids and adults. Well, when I was looking at this mind map, it reminded me of this one that you have for the District 79 Public Relations team. Well, it's kind of a mind map in sorts. How brilliant is that? So thank you to the PR team, and thank you. And I also greatly appreciate your tagline, one family, one mission, D79. And I have cherished memories, and you'll see my beautiful gift here that when I did present in Doha, that this was absolutely beautiful, and I cherish this presenter award. So thank you. All right, so back to you. When we look at this, and please, regardless of which handout that you have, please have the mind mapping where it's landscape in direction, where it's longer going across. It just seems to work better than that. Then what you would do for crafting your presentation is to put a brief note, perhaps a title, or what is the topic that you think you're going to be addressing. Now, for your employer, this may be assigned. If you are talking about an icebreaker, you could put just the words me or your name in the middle of the circle. If you are working on a speech contest, you might consider putting the overarching concept in the middle of the circle. Then here's how the magic works. On each one of those lines, you start writing a word, a thought, a concept. This would be about the 1300 position on a clock or an 0100 position on the clock. And how we do this is this taps into the right brain, which is where the creativity, the spontaneity, problem solving, innovation, all of that comes from the right side of the brain. That's what this activity empowers and enables, as opposed to the left brain with the lined piece of paper. So, and then you can always add more lines into this. You can also draw this yourself. I provided a worksheet for you to help it be easy. So on each line, as you are writing on it, you turn your piece of paper, it would be counterclockwise, as you are writing on each line clockwise on each of the lines. And again, without editing, without thinking, oh, but that's not, no negativity, no discounting of ideas. This gets the thoughts out of your head onto a tangible form that you can see it. You can edit it later. And if there's a negative that comes up, it might be in a sales presentation that's a sales objection that must be addressed in your presentation. So even non-positives have a valuable place in this particular process. So then as you go around, now I'd like you to start thinking about what topic or how you want to do this. Again, this is live workshop. So print this out, get the piece of paper ready, and start thinking about what will you be applying this to. And if you're not sure and you don't have a speech coming up, start thinking about maybe your next holiday, or what are you doing for the weekend with your family perhaps in the beautiful weather. So let me show you an example of what this looks like from my own experience. I was asked to speak to a Chamber of Commerce here in San Diego, and the topic was speaking for business owners. So in the middle of the circle then, I put that was the topic, not necessarily the speech title. I'm a firm believer that the speech title reveals itself sometime in the process and preparation of the speech. I never start with the speech title. Now that may surprise you, and that might be worth it right there for having attended this virtual session. Instead, let the magic work and let that creativity bubble up, and it will make itself known to you. So the topic again was speaking for business owners. Like I just shared with you, I started at the 1 o'clock position with resources, basic information, organizing content, authentic connection, rapport, natural delivery, stage fright and fears, how to prepare, practice and rehearsal, openers and closers, which by the way, there's 26 different openers and closers, and then addressing structure, flow, transitions, a call to action, speaking to inform, and all the way around the entire mind map. As a result of doing this process, which this only took 5 minutes, seriously, only 5 minutes, I was able to flesh out each of the main points. You know how we have 3 main points to address in any presentation? And my presentation was 45 to 50 minutes for that particular meeting, that I was able to chunk after I fleshed out these ideas, was to then sort them into chunks, where this topic for natural delivery, under natural delivery, I would probably have authentic gestures, eye contact, movement. How close are we to the audience in live presentations? So I would put several things under that particular main point if that was one that I selected. And then bringing it all together, and then I also created a handout. They don't receive this. They received a professionally designed handout because people want to take information away with them. My speaking tip for you here, how to speak like a pro, is to always ensure that your audience has something to take notes on, whether it's a PDF on their smart device or wherever that they can take notes. People want to capture the value that you share. From this presentation, from this mind map, it went into the presentation, designed tailored slides matching the theme, and this particular product was actually created as a result of those 5 minutes brainstorming. This became a product, an actual workbook, where it has a spiral binding that people can actually open it up onto their desk and write in it, because it's loaded with worksheets, including those openers and everything. So it became a guidebook, and it was available for purchase that day. Wow, from 5 minutes of mind mapping this entire product was created. So not only a paid engagement, if that's your goal of earning an accredited speaker, but also a paid product for, again, valuing your content, sharing it with others, and giving a valuable takeaway. I did similar then after that for specifically Toastmasters. And you may have seen this featured when I've presented at Toastmasters International Conventions, as these are official approved documents and USB. So again, what are you doing to help extend the life of your message, including audios where world champions have interviewed me? So let's go back to you. Do you have a topic in mind yet? Could it be that you work with the theme, our hashtag One Family, One Mission, D79? So start thinking of some ideas and start writing words around the web, and let's see how you do. Then we'll come back to that, because in the Q&A, then we can come back to that and actually go into some of your ideas. At the bottom of the page, then in the lower left-hand corner of the handout, is information regarding now what do we do with this information. So we always start with the mind map. Start with the concept that you put into the middle of that circle, and without editing, write down the first things that come to you in every area of the mind map. So just keep working around the circle here for as many as you can. Then we start organizing it. And the easiest way to do that is, again, from that chunking of what do you think would be the different sections. And I'm going to share with you, first of all, what the format is and how it relates to us in the timing, regardless of how brief or how long of our presentation, and regardless of what type of presentation that we give. These are broken down into the opening, the body, and the closing. Raise your hand if you're familiar with this. Yes. And in adult learning theory and in Toastmasters, we apply this. Tell them what you're going to tell them. That's the opening. Then you tell them, that's the body. What are the case studies, the stories, the examples? And then tell them what you told them. The third step is the closing or the summary. So as an overview to this, the opening, and again, there's 26 different kinds. I prefer to go with a grabber. In the introduction tonight, it was opened with 3 questions that indicate a challenge or an issue that the attendees may be encountering, and then formed back to them in a question. This is a powerful type of grabber. It's also called a pattern interrupt, because if maybe the family is preparing dinner right now, that there's other things going on, if you're on this session, we want something that's going to grab your attention and pull you in. My favorite is either 1 or 3 questions that indicate what are the issues, and to turn it into a form of a question. But the grabber could be a shocking statistic. It could be a fact. It could be something that's contradictory to what your employer wants to hear. To a person that you're doing a sales presentation, it could be that objection that came up when you were doing your mind mapping. So there's several different types of grabbers. Then what's the significance and the overview? Why are you giving this particular presentation? These are things to keep in mind for every presentation that you're giving. And my tip here too is to make sure that it's relevant to that particular audience. So Seth and I went through and we talked about what type of presentations would be ideal, and we're thinking this is ideal for the promise to bring it forward and to captivate people's ideas as an educational session. The body of the presentation, now this is American slang that I learned from my own mentor in Toastmasters, and keep in mind, I have been a member now since 1987. So simple math is 33 years. Let's see, 33 years and 9 months. And as of Friday, it will be my 27th anniversary of having earned the accredited speaker designation. So little longevity here. And here's what I learned from Dusty Rhodes, my mentor. He said there's 3 things in the body of a presentation. Gotta know, which you could also say must know. Then there's need to know. That is a second priority to gotta know. And the third is nice to know. Nice to know, but if you run out of time, or if your employer says, okay, instead of 20 minutes, you have 16, that would be where you start eliminating in your format. So that's where you start editing. Never in the opening, never in the closing. Those two need to be very succinct and well planned. So they got to know if there's only one thing that you share with the audience, that's exactly what that needs to be. Then in the closing, we wrap it up, we summarize. Adult learning theory is that we need to be reminded of what it is that we just learned. That way it anchors and supports the retention factor. Circle back, I'm going to demonstrate for you. And then the call to action. In every presentation, we need to have some type of call to action. Do we want people to think differently, be differently? Do we want them to purchase what it is that we are promoting? Do we want them to join Toastmasters? That would be a great call to action. So now there's 3 percentages of the overall time of any presentation that we give. The opening accounts for 10% of that overall time, 10%. The second is 80%. And then the closing is the remaining 10%. So it's a 10, 80, and 10. This makes sense, right? Because the body of the presentation is the longest area, yet both the opening 10% and the closing 10% need to be concise and compelling. So how does this relate to us as Toastmasters? Let's take an example of the speech contest. In a 7-minute speech contest presentation, that 10% would account for 1 minute. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more. This is a good format to follow. For the body of the presentation, 80% in a 7-minute presentation is 5 minutes now. And that remaining closing is the final 1 minute. There's your format. 1, 5, and 1. That's for a 7-minute contest. Well, how does this relate to, say, a 20-minute briefing that you're asked to give for your company or other organization? 20 minutes, your opening is now 2 minutes. Makes sense? The body of the presentation will now be 16 minutes, and the closing will be 2 minutes. So again, in a 20-minute, you have 2, 16, and 2. Now I introduced you to a concept by one of our other Golden Gavel Award recipients, Stephen Covey. You might know his work from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and this is the second of those habits. Begin with the end in mind. Here's another speaking tip. Always use your own photographs whenever you can. I snapped this picky with past International President Pat Johnson when we visited Butchart Gardens in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada a few years ago. I had no idea how I was going to use it, and here it is. I saw the stepping stones and I thought, boy, that has a lot of application. So start using your own photos inside of your presentations. Here's what begin with the end in mind means to us as speakers. And this may be a paradigm shift. And you might not have ever heard this before. So now that we have our format and our percentages and basic time frames for each section of this, here's how I suggest we craft the presentation. Build backward. Now this is different. Build backward. And here's what I mean in that. In both speaking and marketing, which are my areas of expertise, they run a perfect parallel. Based on what I want people to do or think differently as a result of hearing my particular message, then I need to begin with that end in mind. Where am I going with it? Here's what often happens when I coach speakers and other presenters, that they start with the title of the presentation and they force themselves to fit whatever their concepts are back into that title of the presentation. That's why I'm saying don't lead with starting with the title of the presentation. Start with what the topic is, sure, and maybe an overall concept. What's the purpose of this presentation? In the opening, it's called the significance. So why are we giving this particular presentation on this particular topic at this time for this particular audience? Based on what action we want to inspire, we need to start with that first. So what's the bottom line? Build backward. Again, as you're crafting it, not as you're presenting it, but as you're crafting it to get those thoughts in order. This will start making more sense too. So build backward. And what I mean by that is start crafting the closing. It could even be that you write down, what is your final statement? In speech contests, by the way, it could be the title of the speech. Ooh, that's a great secret. So what's your call to action? Then, and then your summary is going to tap into, well, what was in the body of the presentation. So you're building backwards, starting with the closing, then based on how you are going to be ending this presentation, what facts, statistics, details, case studies, stories, scenarios, data, analytics are going to be vital to make your point. Those get included in the body of the presentation. Take the most pertinent, must be shared with the audience tips and put that into the gotta know position. Those can come up from your mind mapping. You could even take one of those ideas from the mind map and make another mind map just of the gotta know information to further flush that out deeper, more concisely. And then need to know information. And then it could be, well, what would be nice to know, but again, in case your time gets short, then it could be eliminated. Building backward then, starting with that call to action, what's the closing into the body of the presentation, then based on that, then what would be a grabber of an opening? Quite often the grabber of the opening ties into the closing statement, and I call that the circle back. So build backward. Then in your presentation, you flow forward. And here's the circle back. Whatever your closing is, find a way to tie it back in to the opening of your presentation. It might be that the grabber for your presentation was a shocking statement or something that is in contradiction, or that it is the problem and that you call it out. We say the elephant in the room. What is the most dominant thought that everybody's thinking, or what's the purpose of this particular meeting? And you bring that out as the grabber. Then you circle back to the closing, that whatever that grabber is could be tied in, either paraphrased or exactly into the closing of the presentation. It could be that the same question that you asked at the very beginning is the question that again you end with at the bottom. That then you are creating profound thought, maybe mindfulness, a new way of thinking, or perhaps that's where the rest of the meeting goes to generate solutions to it. So that's called the circle back. Raise your hand if this is great. Is this great? Yeah. You will never craft a presentation ever the same way again. Yeah, I love it. So if you're looking for, thank you for raising your hand. I see those come up. Thank you very much. I love that. So here's a way that you can apply this to storytelling. Is if you're familiar with the Heart of a Toastmaster book, which I was honored to publish on behalf of Toastmasters International, these are stories of fellow members from around the globe, true stories, nothing fabricated. No one was paid for their story. They own the rights to their stories. That in many times the mind mapping was used for the authors of those stories that went into these beautiful true life collection of stories. So if you're looking for storytelling, and if you're thinking, and if you want more inspiration about Toastmasters, then you could pick up a copy of either one of these online. The tip here though is to share your own story. Use these as a starting point, but you have your own you have your own story to share. So use your mind mapping to create that. I think that the mind map would be ideal for creating an icebreaker in every new pathway level that you start. You can use the mind map for every presentation that you're creating, and then layer into that the opening, the body, the conclusion, and the circle back. Why we wanted to bring this to DTAC tonight and to our Facebook Live is that we want you to stand above the audience, not positionally, but we want you to be metaphorically where you are in command, where you know what it is that you're doing, where you are confident. And most of us joined Toastmasters however long ago, 33 years, to gain more confidence. As a business owner, each of my employees was actually younger than myself, and I respect my seniors. I needed to learn how to give effective feedback to other people, my employees as well as to my clients that would come into my place of business. And someone at a Chamber of Commerce recommended that I attend this communication skills course that was being offered. And it was probably about an hour drive in San Diego traffic. So just think San Diego, Los Angeles traffic. Yes, it's quite similar. So I thought, yes, I need this. And I walked into the meeting room that morning. There was a fire crackling in the background. There were two professionally dressed women greeting me at the door. Later, I found out they were sergeant at arms. I was walking into a Toastmaster Club meeting for the very first time on March 15th, 1987. I had no idea that this would change my life and really transform my life and help me find more of my passion, my purpose, and my gifts. So we want you to find that for yourself as well. That session that I attended is Speechcraft. It was an 8-week course. I strongly recommend that every club, and right now World Headquarters is giving it a refresh. Speechcraft is the best membership building tool that we can use to build and retain our clubs. You can check out the hashtag Speechcraft on Facebook and search posts regarding anything regarding Speechcraft. So in this session, and we're getting ready to open up for Q&A, and I sure hope that you've already been using the mind map. So in this session so far, you have learned tips to save time crafting any type of presentation. You've also discovered how quickly to sort your thoughts, and not necessarily on a lined sheet of paper, but to get them out of your brain so that it supports you in doing what your projects are. And you also learned how to revisited how to organize and to finish a speech. If you're interested in more information or one of the courses that I have upcoming regarding becoming a paid speaker, then take a screenshot of this, because it's Speak and Market Like a Pro, the 10 must-haves in the speaking business, and especially now in virtual presentations as well. And this is not webinar, this is online training, small group coaching series, where maximum of 12 participants in each session. So you can go to this website, it's a bit.ly/VT for virtual training -02. With that, this is the main presentation for you. I will now stop sharing and let's go into the Q&A. And Chat Master, thank you very much.
I'm Sheryl for your fantabulous session. We in the DAC are so honored to have you, and all of us, I'm sure, will learn something new today. So I have one question from our chat box that I received. If you tell them what you are going to tell them, don't you think that this will give away your elements of surprise? I'll repeat it again.
Thank you. Okay. So the elements of surprise. So if we tell them what we're going to tell them, it could be that we don't tell them quite everything. Then you still have the element of surprise. There's a question here too that I see. If you would like my slides, I anticipated that. And I do have, let's see. Oh, I will provide for you. Sorry, it's not on this particular desktop, but I do have for you. Yep, sorry, it's not on this laptop. I will get that to Sess, who can then provide it for you, or Samira. So thank you for that. So yes. What's our next question?
Next question. Do we have Mr. Toastmaster Faris? Or from the audience, is there any raised hand from our audience?
Thank you. The question is?
Rafiq.
Rafiq.
Toastmaster Rafiq.
Rafiq Ahmed, unmute. Ahmed, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you for unmuting me. Thank you, Sheryl, for that excellent presentation. Love the idea of mind mapping, and you give so many gems all at the same time, and it was all just coming in one after the other. And I started noting them down, and I realized I didn't have enough space on the paper, so I took a pad to write them all down. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. I'm laughing at the pad because it probably has lines. That's why I'm giggling.
Yeah, I have a yellow pad though with lines on it.
Exactly the example. Thank you. Continue.
Awesome. All right. I heard you say this, and it kind of like caught me off guard. A couple of things you said were all, I was guilty of them all. So I said, oh, she's nailing it directly in to the point. So I love those. One point I wanted to ask you is, when you start, since you said the first 2 minutes, which is going to be just 20% of your speech, is it okay for you to throw the audience into a scene which they have no clue what it is all about, and then maybe reveal it all the way in the end, what that scene was all about? Will this create an interest level in the audience, or will this just probably take the interest off the speech itself? What do you think about it?
Thank you. This is brilliant. First, a couple of things. In a 20-minute presentation, the opening is 2 minutes. Otherwise, typically in a 5 to 7 minute, it's 1 minute or less. And creating drama, that's exactly, matter of fact, it was Alfred Hitchcock who is known for creating that type of suspense and thrillers in his movies. And we see a lot of movies and docudrama, well, not docudramas, but episodes where it's created where you get the opening of the scene, then it goes throughout, or hey, here's what happened, 5 days before this event happened. And then in the conclusion, yes, that's when the mystery is revealed. If you remember watching, I know I'm dating myself here, police episodes or private investigator episodes like Columbo with Peter Falk, I'm curious, And then what would happen is that the person who is guilty would reveal themselves because they're feeling so sorry for the investigator, very, very humorous. That is one particular style that is very effective. So the answer to all of those is yes.
Okay, then we have more questions. Storytelling, how to make mind map with opening, body, and conclusion.
Storytelling, thank you. So the example that was just requested could be where you start setting the scene and then that you go through the rest of the story. And again, it's a very compelling or revealing ending for that. Storytelling in today's world with digital and the narrative that we need to create, it could be the storytelling opens up with facts and statistics, and then they're revealed where those statistics came from. And then the ending of the storytelling of that data narrative could be where this is how we can change the numbers. Or if we don't change these numbers, this could be where we're going. So storytelling is powerful for that. Another style here is chronology. When my father celebrated his 80th birthday, I asked him to write out the story of his life. And I was able to find all the resources, everything that he named, and put into an hour-long slide presentation of the story of my father's life. So that becomes a chronology, or what happened in a chronological type of order. Beautiful for storytelling. I believe too that in any time that we are presenting, we are sharing stories. So in this presentation, in our brief time, you've heard a few different stories. So how can you apply those stories into everything that you're doing, whether it be a metaphor or a parallel or a parody or whatever type of prophecy that you would like to share? They're all storytelling, and our audiences need it. Great question.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. First of all, I'm so glad to see you again.
It's wonderful, my friend.
And you look as gorgeous as always.
Oh, keep talking. Keep talking.
Now, my question is in 2 parts. You prepared an awesome speech, just like you just said. Now comes the delivery, okay? Now, do you believe in memorize the introduction, memorize the the conclusion, or memorize everything because we say practice, 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 because you worked so hard on it and you actually thought of every single word, which means a lot, okay? Or do you just Memorize the whole lot. This is number one. And number two, have you ever gone blank on stage like I did once? And what do you do when that happens to you? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great questions. Number two also relates to number one. It just does. So for instance, when I first started in Toastmasters, I did number two that you mentioned. I memorized the entire thing, and sure enough, my mind went blank and I forgot. Thank goodness it was only in the loving, supportive environment of a Toastmaster club. Thank goodness. If I had been paid for that presentation, they would have wanted their money back. So yes, I have. So then what I learned for me is that memorizing a speech is not my style. It's not authentic for me. Nothing about what you saw today was memorized. That comes with practice, where you know your content, you know yourself, and that, especially after over 4,000 presentations now, then you want to be fully present. We can tell when a speaker has memorized painfully and delivering it inauthentically. We do not want to see bad actors. We want to see real people delivering powerful messages. So one of the big transformations for me was to stop memorizing, to remember maybe my first opening line, because right there, I don't know about you, but there's 5 stages of stage fright, by the way, you know, of when do they start coming up. Stage 1 is when you're preparing for the presentation. You know, I have that one too. And one of the most vital stages is right before you're introduced to speak. I don't know about you, but that's when my mind goes blank. It's like, uh-oh. And thank goodness somebody else is talking as we're walking up to the front of the room, or now virtually. So we need to be very mindful of when someone's introducing us. It's okay, don't be scratching your head during that because you're visible, you know, you're on, it's showtime. And instead, to know what you're going to be delivering, remember what the purpose is of that particular presentation, focus on it. If you focus on how are you ending the presentation, everything else will fall into place. I used to write every single speech. Great, brilliant writing. Couldn't remember it. So then the mind would go blank. Then I would memorize the opening, memorize the closing. That was better for me. Then I thought, well, how can I be more authentic? Because you know how there's things that happen during the presentation that you can't even plan for. It could be that something happens, or that maybe someone before you said something that, and maybe it was related to or contradict what was going to be said in your presentation. We have to be present. We have to be paying attention to what somebody else has said before us. Maybe there's a callback to it, you know, callback and is in the humorous sense of that. We need to be so alert and attentive that we can shift, we can slightly pivot to anything that has happened before our presentation or during. In that case, have several potential closings that you're considering and not be held to that one, the only one that we had memorized. So I prepared typically 3 different openings, 3 potential closings. Do not memorize the body. Know what my 3 points are. Here's another concept from the acting industry. It's called billboarding. Billboarding. It's all one word, B-I-L-L-B-O-A-R-D-I-N-G. Billboarding is where on the blank screen of your mind that you have only 3 words. Maybe they're 1 bullet point, you know, per word. So maybe no more than 3 bullet points in your mind's eye, like on a blank sheet of paper, and that's what you see. This is very helpful if we forget where we are, if we forget where we're going, or if we find ourselves, ladies, sisters, this one's for us, if we find ourselves rambling, because the men are looking and they're going, what's your point? I see you rolling your eyes. What's your point? Ladies, here's the code. Write this down. Here's my point. Write that down. Somebody please type it in the chat. Here's my point. That will get you back on course and re-engage our men folk. I'm just saying it works. So be really careful about that. Then that billboarding will help you remember where you are, what's your next point, And then you're back on track, and all of that is in the moment. And thank goodness table topics and impromptu speaking helps us to recover from that, create a quick segue, a transition from where we were to where it is that we're going, and you're back up and going again. And then it might even be that because of that, it shifts what your closing comments are. All of that works together. I would, and we also, with due respect to all of our speech contestants, yes, there's a degree of memorization. Fine. However, please practice making it authentic so that we feel as if it's the first time you've ever delivered that message and that you're speaking to my heart. I can tell whether a speaker will place and how high within 2 minutes time. I will know if they've placed in 20 seconds. Within 2 minutes, I can determine what place they will actually fall in the awards based on the engagement, the style, the content, the delivery. Today, we're looking for authenticity. So in addition to how you are applying all the tips that you've been learning here, make sure to deliver it with authenticity. Be very real and genuine. And your audience knows, they know. And speak from your heart. Great questions, both of them.
Thank you so much. So we really have a lot of questions. What was your biggest challenge you faced during your 33 years in Toastmasters?
Thank you. My greatest challenge in Toastmasters goes all the way back to the beginning, to my icebreaker. And there are friends who I still see who were there when it was horrible. I cried. I held onto the lectern with both hands for dear life. I was holding on so tightly, my knuckles froze that they turned white and red. You know how they do when they're, I held onto that lectern for dear life. And I'm crying. I am crying. I am crying. It was the ugly, no, sorry, gentlemen. It was ugly. Tears flooding down my face. And my icebreaker, you know, I thought, oh, I don't have enough to talk about for 4 to 6 minutes. Anybody else have that? Yeah, I did. In 6 minutes and 29 seconds. And I read from index cards. So memorizing didn't help. I couldn't even stick to my own index cards. So I get it that I'm not supposed to be reading my own speeches. That was another transformation of my years. And I'm crying and everything else. And I had 19 ahs that day. And I had to pay $1.90 US, you know, because my club, if you say it, you pay it. You don't cap off, and DTMs, doggone it, you need to pay 25 cents for each one because you ought to know better. But anyway, so I thought, what's wrong with this picture? I'm crying, I'm paying. This doesn't make sense. I want to be a paid speaker. Anyway, I still cried my second speech. My third speech, I also cried, less holding on to the lectern. And then the fourth one, I went for it. And that time, the speech was to use gestures. And I had one outfit underneath my professional outfit. And when I went to the front of the room before my time started, then excuse the reference, but you'll get this, that I removed the outer layer of the clothing and that you could see that I was attired in sports attire, and I slipped a glove on and picked up my racket, and I turned to the flip chart and I slammed it against the flip chart and I said, welcome class to Racquetball 101. And that's a dramatic opening. And I took people into how to play the sport of racquetball. And I got a couple dates out of it too. So anyway, that was a great transformation for me, you know, to teach people how to do that. And again, completely unexpected, yet following the format. So all of this works. Let's see, other transformations over the years, as I had just shared, is not to memorize, or do your research too. If you're speaking to a group or to your own organization, you need to do your homework. You need to know who's going to be in the audience and serve them with great reverence, and know who you're talking to. The worst mistake I've ever made, which goes back to your question, is that I didn't know enough about the audience before addressing them. That was the first and only time I made that mistake. And I knew that I blew it in the first 2 minutes. And there was no recovery. And I did refund the group that was paying me. I felt horrible about it. Never let it happen again. And I think that because we start learning these skills, we feel very confident. We must be mindful of arrogance, though. Let's always be mindful and never arrogant. Do your homework.
Says there is Muhammad Sajid raising his hand for a long time.
Yeah. Can I go ahead?
I think so. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, first of all, for sparing your valuable time. My question is somewhat addressed already, but just to be very specific, I want to ask that whether you have memorized the speech or you have the closing and ending in your mind or research, whatever. But from my personal experience, what I see is that once you are on the stage facing the audience, what happens that first thing is that your mind start working like God knows what speed.
Yes.
And you start speaking so fast and your heart is pounding. And you, like the question of authenticity, is very much related to when you are at peace and you have a focus. So how to address this particular thing, keeping aside the rest of the things you have done, you have done everything, but how to be in your mind at this stage? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Those are great questions. And I'm reflecting to numerous times I've had that occur in my own life. So thank you. That's a very real situation. Here's what we can do. Knowing that about ourselves, that we have that, is to be more planned for it. Beforehand, be mindful of caffeine, which causes our heart to race anyway. And the Middle East, you have the best, strongest coffee ever. So just be mindful about that. Watch out for any caffeine into your system. Instead, drink water that is room temperature or slightly warm, which will also calm down. Consider rhythmic breathing, deep breathing. So again, these are physiological things that we can do. I would also work on the mindset as well as the body. So the mindset, whatever are going to be calming phrases for yourself. The largest audience that I've addressed in a sports arena is 5,000 people. And there were two, I was a keynote closing presenter, one day, one audience, 4 days later, different audience, same sports arena, a different 5,000 people. And the words that we say to ourselves make all the difference in the world because our mind believes it. So start calming yourself down with that. Catch yourself in the moment. On stage, this is a perfect example of why you would want to use gestures and how the movement is critical. So if I were coaching you, Mohammed, then I would say, make sure to have something that in the very opening, you're using that supercharged adrenaline. Use it in your speech, whatever that opening is that maybe, well, look at Darren LaCroix, you know, he fell on his face. After that, you know, while he was down too long, then he could breathe, he could regroup, stand back up and keep going. So whatever that drama looks for you, or the movement, the adrenaline's going through the body, it needs instruction because the adrenaline is waiting for you to say, is it excitement or is it nervousness? The mindset, by saying, wow, I'm excited, it gives it a positive purpose. Instead of, oh, I'm so nervous, because then the body goes, okay, we can be nervous. We can even be more nervous. And then it starts becoming more nervous. So again, it's like, I am calm. I am peaceful. I am here to serve this audience. I am relaxed. I got this, you know, and then talk to yourself with that. If you find that your heart's racing too much, then you're probably not breathing either. That would be a great place wherever you are in the stage to plant, breathe, maybe use a phrase that you weren't prepared to say, but to bring it into your heart and take a deep breath. We've all had those experiences. You're not alone. So thank you for asking that. Thank you. Great question.
Thank you so much, I'm Sheryl. I know we have a lot of questions, and if you don't mind, because of the time, if I can send it to you through email.
Yes, thank you. And if you email me, I'll put my email address in here. Then please, in the subject line, put DDAC so that I know it's you. Be happy to respond to those. And I'll follow up and get the slide deck to you perhaps even before the end of this meeting. It's been my honor to serve you.
Thank you so much. Really, we are so honored and we are so proud that you have in us tonight. And, we have a lot of prides in Didac. And really, in my personal thought, I'm so grateful and I'm so honored because before I just watch you in YouTube. And then when we start conversing to each other, then I realize, oh my God, this is it. This is it. So I'm really, really so happy for accommodating us. And Didac, we are really humbled enough to to have you tonight. And really, really, I'm really, really thankful for our participants also who joined us and witnessed this amazing session. So thank you so